Your hosts are here, Sammie and Michelle. By the end of this podcast, you'll know them well. Adulting, navigating the journey of life. Careers to relationships, pain and strife. Put down the rule book, rethink the status quo. If there's another direction you wanna go, find purpose, passion and mastery in all that you do with Status Post Adulting.
Hey, Status Post Adulting family! This is Sammie
and Michelle,
and you're listening to the 72nd episode of Status Post Adulting, where we are going to be talking about what is true financial independence. But first, let me check in with my co-host, Michelle. How are you doing, Michelle?
Oh, I'm doing well, Sammie. We have had a busy weekend. We were able to go visit our friend Rimple in Atlanta. Got to spend some time with her husband Alesh, our friends Esther, Bincy, tons of Michigan people that we love and haven't seen since before the pandemic. I haven't seen any non-family members from Michigan since before the pandemic started. So it was so nice. We got to spend time with her baby. I'm like ready to have a baby now myself. So it was a lot of fun though. It was so nice to be able to spend time with them.
It was super nice. And on our way back, driving back 2 hours from the airport, we encountered our little town here in flames.
Yeah, Sammie's right, actually. Our trip back was kind of crazy because, like everybody who tried to travel around Memorial Day weekend, our flight was canceled, clean canceled. They also clean cut off the top of Sammie's luggage, so we had a lot of issues.
My luggage was beheaded, and luckily Rimple and Delish were so kind to lend me their suitcase because otherwise I would have been in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, it was actually really bad. And then because our non-flight stop was canceled, we instead had to go from Atlanta to Myrtle Beach to Minneapolis to Phoenix, which you might be thinking to yourself, those two in-between cities are nowhere near the West Coast. And you are right. It was a very, very long trip. But, I mean, there's honestly so much to say about this trip in general. I sat next to somebody really cool on the way to Myrtle Beach. This guy who is blind, but he had written a book, which I'm reading right now. And so a lot of interesting things there. But by the time we got home, it was 11 p.m. Sammie and I were not even speaking to each other in the car because honestly, we were sick of each other. And all of a sudden, as we're coming from the freeway, we see these huge flames, the biggest flames I've seen in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, it turns out that two buildings, the furniture building and the appliance store here, have completely burnt down.
And needless to say, we don't really have room for businesses to be burning down because there aren't too many. The Yellow Book is the size of like a church bulletin over here. So to be missing those is kind of a big deal for us.
That's true, Sammie. It's the only furniture store and the appliance store, both of which we had to go shop at when we moved here, are completely burnt down.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even going to lie to you. Sammie and I came, and Sammie was like, oh my gosh, should we go check it out? And I was so tired. And also, this is the second fire we've seen in this town since we've moved here.
Third.
That I was like, I'm going to bed. And I literally cannot even, like when we were in San Francisco, if anything was on fire, everybody would be out in the streets. It would be such a big thing. And this was like 2 blocks away from us. And I was just like, I can't.
Yeah, we could literally see the flames, not just the smoke. And there was a lot of both.
Yeah, I think I was a little bit too tired to fully conceptualize how bad it was. And then when we heard it and then we saw the remnants the other day, it was pretty crazy. So
I'm like, should we just go to sleep with this giant fireball, like not even a mile from our house? But, you know, you live and you learn.
So true, Sammie. And speaking of fires, maybe the worst transition we've ever had.
Good transition, but just, poor taste.
Sammie and I wanted to talk a little bit about financial independence. Financial independence, retire early, FIRE is the acronym, which is the joke. But truly, we wanted to take a deep dive, look at what financial independence means to the outer world and what it means to us and what our thoughts are about it now that we've been thinking about it for a while now.
So true, Michelle. I do feel like financial independence and retiring early, it's one of those topics that you could literally talk about for months and still not fully grasp everything about it. I feel like you could never talk about it enough. And today we really want to just talk about, what is true financial independence? What does this mean to us?
Exactly, Sammie. And it's timely, I think, as well. I think with the economy being in a place where people are starting to bubble up again with their recession predictions. It feels like 2017 to me when everybody in the world was predicting a recession, and yet nobody predicted a pandemic, but whatever. It can put you a little bit on edge and get your brain thinking, what can I do to protect myself? What does it mean for me if there's a recession? Blah, 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 blah. All of those things. They trickle down to financial independence.
And we should probably start off by explaining what financial independence is. Simply put, financial independence is when you have enough money to live for the rest of your life without relying on your typical job.
Exactly, Sammie. It means independent from working, you have enough passive income or money coming in that you can actually be comfortable and living independently outside of your traditional work.
Exactly, Michelle. Most commonly, we think of financial independence as like having enough money in investments that you could live off the interest. But, this could really even be like if you had like a giant pile of cash, like you had like $5 million, $10 million that may not even be producing interest, but you would never use it all. You'd be financially independent with that. And I think many people would even consider having regular passive income streams that don't require a lot of work, like maybe real estate after you got it set up, maybe royalties from a one-hit wonder that you had in the past. That would still be considered financial independence in most people's minds.
It's funny, Sammie, because I feel like financial independence as a general idea has really morphed for me over the years. Because when I was younger, I remember saying I wanted to be financially independent. And really what I meant was from my parents. I wanted to be able to move out of my house. I wanted to be able to pay rent and my bills. And it was really important to me after college to be able to support myself. And as soon as I was able to do that, I was like, I'm financially independent. And I felt great about it. That was like a major financial goal for me.
Yeah, Michelle. And I feel like our mom would always say you need to be financially independent from your husband or other people is what she meant. Because she was saying that, you need to have enough money so that you can always live on your own. The idea of being financially independent from a job, like from employment, I think was not something that crossed our minds growing up as a child. Like that did not even register as a potential goal.
Definitely, Sammie. Even when I thought about retirement, I didn't really put those two together. But I think the reason that financial independence and retire early are often put together is because a lot of people, they only become financially independent, if they ever become financially independent, when they retire in their 60s and they have the opportunity to live off their 401k or Social Security, different things like that.
It's true, Michelle. I do think it is crazy that being financially independent at a younger age didn't come into the mainstream sooner, because we live in a country where, relative to other parts of the world, people do have high incomes. Like even compared to like places like Europe and things like that, the United States, like people get paid a lot more than what they need in general. Obviously everybody has a different situation. But with that, the culture is, very consumeristic. And I think that is the intention of many companies, is to make us purchase more and more things. But actually, if we just saved more than the recommended 5 or 10% of our income, we could just stop working earlier. And I think it's a concept that is so amazing, but yet at the same time, not really advertised at all.
Yeah, Sammie. I think it's not a coincidence that financial independence has grown as a concept almost as a result of all this consumerism in the country, the result of the economy crashing back in 2008. it really got people thinking, oh my gosh, I'm spending all this money and I'm making so much money. And yet, for some reason, I'm still living paycheck to paycheck. So it is crazy that it didn't come up earlier, but I also think it's more relevant now, in the United States at least, than it was in the past.
Yeah, Michelle. And, we talk about financial independence related to, a certain amount of money that you might have. But one thing about financial independence, like after I started to pursue financial independence, one thing I started to appreciate is it's way more than about the money you're accumulating. It's really about the feeling that you have as you start to have enough money for the rest of your life.
That's so true, Sammie. The way I feel today versus when I got my first job and I was just excited to be bringing anything home is so different because I didn't have a lot of space to take risks, or I didn't have a lot of space to lose my job because I wouldn't be able to pay rent because I didn't have anything supporting me. And that's very scary.
It's true, Michelle. Today, we really want to dive into the feeling that you have when you are financially independent or on your way to being financially independent.
Agreed, Sammie. A lot of people, when they hear financial independent retire early, the retire early sticks to them, and they might think, I like my job, I don't really care about retiring early. And I really think that's not the most important part about financial independence. I think really it is about the emotional benefits you get when you hit those technical goals.
Yeah, Michelle, that's so true. I remember I heard about FIRE and I was so excited about it, and I would tell everybody about it. And the number one comment I would get back is people would say things like, oh, like I like my job, I don't really want to retire. Or they would say things like, I can't imagine not working, like what would I do all day? And they were pretty fixated on the aspect of not working rather than the aspect of having enough money to not work, which to me are like completely different things.
Exactly, Sammie. And I think actually part of that when it comes to financial independence for me is also that it gives you a purpose for your money. I think that it's easy to view money as an evil necessity. It's something that we need. And you hear people say, well, I'm not money motivated, or they make job choices that are not necessarily related to pay. But at the same time, in the back of our mind, we know we need money. But what financial independence really gave me was a money goal that ironically also helped me get to a point where I can do work without having to worry about pay.
Exactly, Michelle. I think a lot of people think, oh, it would be so fixated on money to try to just save a ton of money. But ironically, they're kind of more deeply falling into the societal structure of money by not saving money for the future, because they're just making themselves increasingly dependent on society to provide work for them.
Exactly, Sammie. It's funny because I feel like there's always a lot of criticisms in at least this country where people are like, oh, this is so capitalistic, blah, 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 blah. And people have their criticism about those type of things. But I think one of the most important things to understand is we do live in a society where people want you to work so that you can make them money. And it really benefits you to get on the side of getting money instead of working to pay somebody else. Because as long as you're dependent on somebody else or dependent on another business, as the pandemic showed, as a lot of people are realizing right now, your company will lay you off the second something seems wrong. And so you do not want to be on that side of capitalism. You want to be on the side that benefits from the money that's coming in.
Exactly, Michelle. And I think a lot of people have another perspective, which is they come from a scarcity mindset. A lot of times saving money is associated with maybe when they were growing up and they had to be kind of frugal or kind of cheap to make sure that they had enough money to live. And then they associate saving money or being frugal with a time of scarcity, when actually being frugal can actually lead to major abundance.
So true, Sammie. We all had somebody growing up, maybe it was even you, who was categorized as cheap.
Cheap.
Whether or not we or our family had money, the word cheap was thrown around and it was definitely a negative connotation. especially when you don't really come from money, or maybe even when you do, I don't know. But you start to have this idea that people who are saving their money, who are investing their money, those are the people who aren't enjoying life. Those are the people who have a scarcity mindset. And it's very easy to look at people who are frugal and dismiss them because you think, oh, they're not enjoying their lives. They're suffering to reach these financial goals.
Exactly, Michelle. And I think that's where the big reframe needs to happen for people who have those mindsets. Saving money when you're trying to reach financial independence is not about scarcity. It is about abundance. You could save the money or you could not save the money. You don't have to do it if you don't want to do it. But if you save more money, you aren't really dependent on money anymore. You are not dependent on somebody else for money anymore. You have your own money and it's doing its own thing and it provides for you. You provide for yourself. I know this might be a stretch, but financial independence reminded me of loving yourself. You know, I think a lot of times when we're growing up, maybe we think, because media has told us, that we will find love externally and then we will be happy. And I think a lot of people realize they love themselves and that love doesn't come externally. Like, it's great to experience love with other people. It's great to care for other people. It's great for other people to care about you. But at the same time, you could be in a desert in the middle of nowhere with nobody, and you would still have happiness because you have an internal love for yourself that comes from the inside. Like, it comes without external requirements.
Let me see if I'm following you, Sammie. Your job or your source of money is like your boyfriend or your significant other who is giving you love, or any outside source that's giving you love. But when you have money that you're saving and growing, that is your self-love. And so whether or not you have money coming in from an external source, whether or not you have love coming in from an external source, that's great. That's the cherry on top. But you do not need it because you yourself have what you need to love, quote unquote, yourself.
Exactly, Michelle, exactly. That is how I see financial independence. It is like loving yourself. And I don't know, I mean, maybe it's a stretch, but that's really how it feels to me. Like, it has that same feeling of like, whew, like relief, and like also just like this feeling that like you can jump and you always have a safety net. Everything is going to be okay. You can take more risks because you're going to be fine. Like, you love yourself. It doesn't matter. You can try to date whoever you want because at the end of the day, you can leave them and you're still going to love yourself. You can try out whatever adventures you want to try out. At the end of the day, you have enough money to sustain yourself, so it doesn't matter.
I'm here for it, Sammie. I totally agree too, because here are the things that you can get outside of retiring if you have enough money to support yourself for any period of time, whether it's for the rest of your life or even just a year, 2 years, wherever you are at and that journey. You can take more risks with work because now you are able to stand up for yourself. You're able to try new things because even if you lose your job, you know that you can support yourself. You can take time off to be with your family, whether that's your kids, aging parents, your sister, your friends, whomever it might be. You now have the ability to take time off without relying on your work. You can take time off for extended leisure. If you want to take a sabbatical for a year, you just want to travel the world, you have the opportunity to do those things. You can work on projects that might not have immediate pay gratification, like a creative project or starting a business. You can do that even if the income doesn't come immediately because you're able to sustain yourself. And the biggest thing is you got that you money, that F-U money. The truth is, you might want to leave your job at some point. You might love your work today, and it might turn into a toxic environment tomorrow. And so having the ability to work somewhere and then be like, this is not working for me anymore. I have enough money. I'm just going to leave is so powerful.
You know, Michelle, hearing you say that really makes me appreciate how financial independence really breaks the cycle. Like, it disrupts the matrix. How society wants things to work is you go to your job, you make money, you take that money, you spend it on other businesses, and you spend as much of it as possible. Those businesses make money off of your spending. Then you go back to work and you make more money because you need it. And then that cycle continues and everybody's doing it and everybody's in the same cycle. And the secret to breaking the cycle is just accumulating the money that you would otherwise spend. Because if you start accumulating the money that you otherwise would spend, you don't have to go back to the job if you don't want to. And then that entire cycle, that entire structure is broken because you as an individual made a choice to do things differently.
It's so true, Sammie. And listen to me. It doesn't matter where you are today on your financial journey. Everybody is on a different place. And all we're saying is take a second, evaluate how much money am I spending? What do I require to live on? And am I saving some money? Can I save some money? Can I gain 1 month of freedom? 2 months of freedom? It doesn't have to start with 30 years of freedom. It's just saving a little bit of money and starting to see not dollars, not $2,000, but shoot, $2,000, that's my expenses for the month. That's 1 month of living. $4,000, that's 2 months of living. That's how we want you to reframe. When you do that, it doesn't matter if there's a recession. It doesn't matter if something happens and you want to be able to take time off for whatever reason. Now, all that matters is that you have control and you are not trapped in a system that's keeping you working and keeping you buying things to make you feel good about yourself because you're working all day. Escape out of that. You can still have everything you want. You can still have the things you truly want, but there are things that you can cut out and buy yourself long-term freedom.
Preach, sis. And as you were talking, I was thinking about the phrases hamster wheel and rat race, which I think apply very well to the typical go to work, make money, spend the money, go back to work, make money, spend the money cycle. And one thing I was thinking about is in both those scenarios, in a real life hamster wheel where a hamster is on a wheel, and in a real life rat race where a rat is in a little maze thing, both of those things have an external person who is kind of controlling the situation. Like that external person is controlling the hamster and that external person is controlling the rat. And all the hamster has to do, for example, is just stop walking and hop off the wheel.
Dang.
And I think that's like us saving money. We just have to accumulate wealth and not continue to spend, and we can get off that wheel.
Wow, Sammie, that is so true. And side note, if you are one of the few people who have found status post-adulting because you searched hamster wheel on Google, which is apparently one of our biggest keywords for Google Podcast, I am sorry. This is not a podcast about hamsters. However, if you're still listening and you're interested in that content, I'm sure we can pivot. But quick side note there. Also, this is not hamster checklist. Second biggest keyword.
I wonder what hamster checklist, what's their intention when they Google that? They're like, oh my God, I'm getting a hamster. Like, what's a hamster checklist?
I need that stuff they put on the bottom. I need a hamster wheel. Oh, here is a podcast focused on hamsters. No, clearly the retention is very poor for those people. But jokes aside, you're totally right, Sammie. We are meant to be free animals, free hamsters, free rats, free humans. It's an outside force that is forcing us to stay on this hamster wheel. And yes, we start from a place, maybe not everybody, but a lot of us start from a place where we don't have enough money to not work, where we don't have enough money to support ourselves. We have debts. We have people we need to take care of. And the goal is to slowly move yourself in the other direction, or quickly if you have a high income and high spend, you can make a couple quick changes there, but to move ourselves slowly so that you can buy freedom from those things. So you can work if you want to. You can work anywhere that you want to, because as long as you have a little bit of money, you're doing okay.
Takeaways for this episode, Michelle. I think for me, the biggest takeaway is that yes, financial independence is having enough money to not rely on income from a job, but financial independence is really much more about the feeling that you experience and that confidence that you experience from having enough.
Agreed, Sammie. It's interesting because we start this episode with the question of what is true financial independence? And I think the real answer to that is, what is the why? What would financial independence mean to you? If it's not about being able to stop working, is there something else? A project? Time off that you'd want to have? The ability to switch jobs? The ability to work at a lower paying job or a higher paying job? The answer to what is true financial independence is, what would financial independence bring you? What is the reason to strive for that goal? I truly believe everybody has something that they would want. I think it's a very rare situation where somebody says, I love my job. I am confident that this job will consistently stay the same over the next 40 to 50 years, and I have no qualms about the fact that I have no security net.
Yeah, Michelle, I think you bring up a good point that everybody has a why. One thing I'll say is I kind of knew that I didn't want to spend all my time at work, but what I would do that with that time, or like why I didn't want to, maybe that wasn't so clear to me, but it actually became more clear with the more money I accumulated. Because sometimes just depending on the job for an income, like just depending on a job to live, can make it so that you really can't see how you would live with more abundance. And sometimes accumulating more money like gives you more freedom, and literally your brain can be more creative and think, oh, like what could I actually do if I had enough money? Like how could I actually spend my time? And I think, if you're sitting there and you're like, I don't know what my why is, I think that's really normal. I think sometimes we can literally be blocked by the fact that we know we have to work. So I think sometimes accumulating even just a little bit of money, like it can start with, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 year. And the next thing you know, your brain just opens up and you're like, no, I can actually see what I would do with my free time, or what I would do if I was free.
I totally agree, Sammie. I don't think I knew my why when I left my last job. I never thought at that point that I would take a break from working, just because I had a lot of other concerns about taking time off. It wasn't until a few months in, when my work anxiety calmed down, that I started to really think about what I wanted to do with my time. And it wasn't sit on the beach all day. Not related to the fact that we got burnt up in Hawaii, but seriously, like I enjoy being around people. I enjoy doing work to some extent. Like financial independence really for me wasn't retiring early, but I did start to appreciate other things that I enjoyed. Like honestly, working for myself, working for a good cause, doing work that I thought was meaningful, not just things that my company wants me to do because they're trying to squeeze the lemon and micromanage, and thus I'm doing useless stuff. Like those things, I realized how much I wanted to cut those things out, and I could go back to it. I'm not saying I'm super against it, but those are the things I really appreciate having moved out of the traditional workforce.
So thank you guys for joining us on our journey as we make our way to FI. Michelle and I are not financially independent yet, but we are working our way there, and we are closer and closer every single day. And we are really happy that you guys are on this journey with us.
We're so excited. We know that at some point in the future, we're all going to be partying together, celebrating our lack of working for the man. Maybe, who knows? Sign up for our newsletter. We will be sending out newsletters now, supplying the content that we talk about every month, adding a couple additional things, maybe photos of our small town, who knows? Whatever the people want. Follow the link in our show notes to subscribe, and send this podcast to a friend. If you think somebody could benefit from thinking about life after adulting, definitely shoot them this podcast. We think that they would enjoy it.
Yes, if you have been trying to tell someone about financial independence and they haven't been receiving it, I've been there. You get too excited and then you are bulldozering someone with information about financial independence. Happens to me all the time.
As someone who's been a victim of this, specifically from Sammie, I get it too.
Send them the podcast. It's much better that someone just listen on their own and take their own takeaways. You don't want to force things on people, apparently. That's what I'm told. And so, yeah, share the podcast with a friend so that you and all your friends and all of us can be financially independent together and be free.
Be free!
But most importantly, be sure to join us next time as we put down the rule book and rethink the status quo.